All right, so welcome to our class. We'll try this one more time. Better with Age, class 2. And I was talking about one of my very favorite things, which is the Reader's Digest. And I just got this in the mail, and it says, find your happy place. How do you like that for synchronicity? Is that just awesome synchronicity that today's class is about that? And part of it, in one of the big things it talks about, is writing thank you notes. And that thank you notes make you happy. And we always do talk about that in a lot of my mindfulness classes, that no matter who you are, this is about better with age, but at any age, when you go to gratitude and you go to thank yous, and you end up going up to your higher level of thinking. So I recommend everyone, if you had to pick one magazine that's going to give you good stuff, Reader's Digest. And you can also get it in big print, which is awesome. All right, I'm going to share my screen now with you guys, and here's my PowerPoint. So all right, I can see you, Jackie. Can you see my PowerPoint? Excellent, excellent. Okay, so here we go. And I just want us to do a quick little review of the brain, because when we're talking about the art of happiness, I want us to realize that it's inside of our brain. Happiness is inside of us. It's not outside of us, it's inside of us. So we have the lower brain that keeps us in survival mode. And the lower brain regulates your heart rate and regulates, so the real primitive fight, flight, freeze response. And then you have your middle brain. Your middle brain, now this is the Reader's Digest version, of course, we know that. But your middle brain is where you have all your memories, and also how you have your emotions, sadness, which we're going to talk about today, regret, which we're going to talk about today, and also anger, which we're going to talk about today. All is how you handle those emotions are imprinted into your middle brain. And then we have the higher level of the brain, or the executive order part of our brain. That's our prefrontal cortex. And this right up here, our prefrontal cortex, that's where we're able to have problem solving and impulse control. So when you get triggered, you don't go and hit someone. The impulse control comes up and says, hey, maybe punching someone right now is like the bad thing to do. And it also has where you have empathy and compassion. So when we were talking about writing thank you cards, that is not a habit. That is higher level of thinking. So when this woman in the Reader's Digest article, she wrote a thank you card to people that are meaningful and important to her every single day. Every single day she was accessing her higher level of brain. So that's real important, because that is where we're able to actually tame Amy. And Amy is, we've talked about this before, but your amygdala. Let's see if I can get that D in there, but I'm saying Amy. And that's when you get startled and you get upset. Amy is like your alert guard, is your security guard to make sure everything's okay. And if Amy is always on, then you have chronic stress. But we want to tame Amy, not get rid of Amy, but tame it and allow Amy to relax, because you can't be happy, right? If Amy is on fire all the time and you want to run away, or you want to freeze, or you're in that chronic stress. So how do you tame Amy? As you activate the prefrontal cortex. So we want to learn these things as we're doing neurons that fire together. Our brain is made of neurons, and we're learning how to learn new things with our neurons. Or actually, if we have bad habits and we're repeating a habit, we're making those neurons fire together become stronger, much stronger. So there we go. And it will move forward for me, because I know it will. Because those neurons that fire together, wire together, they're not in the computer. They're not moving forward. I wonder why not. There we go. So we'll go this way. So last week, when we're talking about getting better with age, remember we're talking about what was so important was how old you feel. Not how old you are, but how old you feel. And the reason why I wanted to bring that back up is because that's neurons firing together and wiring together. If I'm 53, but I feel 83, let me tell you, your brain is going to wire itself to feel 83. And if I'm 53 and I feel like I'm still 45 and I can do all the things of a 45-year-old, whatever that's meant to be, right? Your brain's saying, okay, let's go, let's go. So it's important for us to know. Now, one thing we didn't talk about, and I think is really important, especially in the art of happiness, is people feel like when they get older, who are they? Are they a 53-year-old? Well, I really want you guys, I'm going to take this off, stop sharing for 1 second, because I really want you guys to get this. You're not just a 53-year-old or a 75-year-old or a 66-year-old. You're all your ages. This is why we get better with age. This is so important for you guys to really sink this in. I have already been 12, 16, 18, 24, 35, 45, 48. Just because I'm 53 doesn't take those away. All those experiences, all that knowledge, all those wonderful things that I've learned how to do, play the piano, play basketball, whatever it is, cook, fall in love, whatever it is, they're all still part of me. And we have this feeling sometimes when it comes to getting older that we are this age and we define whatever that age is. So when we look at someone who's 85, we're like, well, that's all I am. I'm like that 85-year-old. But we don't see in that 85, there's the 16-year-old, the 21-year-old, the 25-year-old. There's all that passion, all that knowledge, all those memories, all that wisdom. We're all of that. And don't abandon it. Celebrate it. The art of becoming happier when you're older is not to let go of what you did when you were young, like when you were 12. What did you like to do? Well, do it again because it's still inside of you. It's just so important for us to realize that we're all our ages, not one age. And the good news is if you're wise, okay, if you're wise, then what happens is you're all those ages and you can pick all the good stuff and get rid of the negative ways that you might have had. So I don't have a tantrum like I did when I was 12 or 5. Those behaviors I can let go. But oh my gosh, I love frozen bananas dipped in chocolate. And it brings me back to going to Rehoboth Beach with my family. Oh my gosh, it's the smell of the ocean. That is still inside of me. Now, I'm not going to go and eat dipped bananas with chocolate all the time, but that little girl that ate them and that feeling and that wonderfulness is still inside of me. And I can still experience it right now. But that girl that used to tantrum because she didn't want to do her homework, that girl, you see, you're all of it. So go back to what was really good and bring that forth. It's important for you to know that. You want the art of happiness? Use your whole life of all the good and bring it into the present moment. All right, back to sharing on to here. Okay. So, it's not going to let me advance that way, but that's okay. I'm going to advance this way. So be kind to your mind. Remember, what you think about, you bring about. And it's important because of those neurons that fire together and wire together. Bring forth the good, but don't reinforce the negative. That's the wisdom of age. I have all that good in me, and I can reinforce that through neuroplasticity, but don't be mean to your mind and reinforce the negative things. If it didn't work when you were 35 and you're still doing the same habit, let it go. Stop doing it so the neurons will start breaking apart and then you can substitute it. So in the book, Better with Age, when he's talking about happiness, okay, he talks about happiness. He talks about 2 different kinds of happiness. The day-to-day pleasure of happiness or of wanting to have pleasure and then avoiding pain, which is called the hedonic state of well-being. And then also life satisfaction, what refers to your contentment, your overall happiness. So it's interesting. You can have one of these and not the other, right? I can actually be, it could be my birthday and I'm having cake and I'm having a lot of pleasure in the moment, right? But I might not be satisfied with my life. Correct? You can see how you could have pleasure and that could say, well, that's, I'm happy for the moment, but there's this underlying current of being very unsatisfied of where you've been. Now, the vice versa can happen. I can have great satisfaction in my life and I can feel like I have purpose and I have meaning and that overall things are going well, but I could be having a bad day, but it doesn't mean I'm having a bad life. So this pandemic is a really good example. We have been not allowed to have a lot of our day-to-day pleasures because we have now been told to stay home and our stores have closed and different things. You know, maybe you had an iron and the iron broke and so you can't get it fixed now and Target won't sell you one and all this kind of stuff, so you can't iron clothes. So your day-to-day pleasure's off because you can't have wrinkled clothes, whatever. But your overall satisfaction with how you feel about yourself and how you feel about your family and how you feel about maybe the home you're living on and what you've accomplished in your life and where you're going with your life could be very high. So I would say that that's very true for me. I'm not thrilled about a lot of things that happened, and my day-to-day pleasures have gotten smaller, and there's a lot more pain to avoid because we're always learning about the virus. But overall, I want you to know I love my life. I love my family. I love teaching this class. I love so many of you guys out there. You guys are my friends, my Sangha, my groups. And this is really exciting. So do I have happiness in my life? The answer is yes, because number 2 on this slide is checked in a big way. So remember that it's really judged in 2 ways. There's this terrific book, The How of Happiness, and I'm going to hold this up too because sometimes it looks like this, which is a different cover. It's a fabulous book and it talks about, not for anybody, how to do and handle, bring happiness, and talks a lot about a lot of studies. But in the studies, it says that people that are more happy, they're better leaders, they earn more money, they're more resilient, they live longer, right? Then they stress less. Seems pretty obvious. I want to also hold up another book that's fabulous about happiness. It's called The Hardwire of Happiness. And this is by Rick Hanson, who's like my favorite psychologist. He's a neuropsychologist. He's my favorite. But both of these are fabulous books. And I highly recommend it because this class is only going to be an hour long and we'll talk about happiness, but there's so much more we can do. Get those neurons firing together and learn how to be happier. The more you read about being happier, what's going to happen? You're going to become happier because your brain is looking for it. So you're not trying to read about how not to be unhappy. You don't want to read a book that says how to avoid sadness, because what you're doing is you're wiring sadness. We want to say how to be happy. You want to read that. You want to read the positive. What you think about, you bring about. So make sure that you're programming in your brain what you want. So in this book, The How of Happiness, I just want to I actually taught a whole course on happiness. And I love this slide, and there's a lot of studies on it. And I just want to expose you guys to this one side, that they found out that there's 50% of your genetics determines your happiness, okay? 10% is your circumstance, and 40% is your thoughts. And it's kind of like a car. So 10%, I mean, 50% is the model of your car. I'm a Porsche, I'm a truck, you know. For me, I don't know, I'm a Jag. Nice and long, right? Right? But I'm not really a Jag, but I do like them because they're nice and long. I'm a limousine. No, that's not me either. But anyway, oh, I know what I am. I'm a Chevrolet station wagon. That's what I am. Okay, so I'm a Chevrolet station wagon. And then the external circumstance, 10%, that's the pandemic. That's what's going around you, okay? So it's kind of like the road surface. If I was a car, if it was raining, if it was sunny, if it was really hot, only 10%. So in other words, people that were happy before the pandemic, probably right now, after they've kind of gotten used to the shock of everything, are happy again. And people who were unhappy before the pandemic, let me tell you, they're unhappy right now too, because who they were only gets influenced a little bit by your circumstance. I want you to know there's a 2-year bump for getting married. So when you get married, they found out that people are happy for 2 years. And then after that, they bounce back to however they were, happy or unhappy, whatever level of that is. Before marriage, they go back to that, unless you do the work. And the work is the actions and thoughts. And that's what this class is all about. We're doing the work. We can change how we react to our circumstance. We can also influence our genetics. Think about it. You can influence your genetics. In other words, if I was born a very happy person, but then I ate poorly, I never exercised, I did drugs, I was alcohol, whatever, things like that, that will influence not being happy, right? And then there's some people who might have been born, happiness isn't just like something that jumps out of them. But if they eat well and they exercise and they're honest and they have right thought and right speech, they'll attract good people around them and they'll be happy. So think of the 40% influence of, like, are you putting gasoline in your car? Or are you putting water in your car, right? Are you changing the oil? Or are you not changing the oil? My Chevrolet station wagon, if I maintain it, no matter what, it'll keep going. But if I start putting sand or dirt for gas, it ain't going far. It's going to break down. So the art of happiness, what we can influence is the 40%. In the book that we're reading, this is not a very pretty, I know, slide. It's pretty crazy, but I wanted to make it for you guys. It was saying, it did a whole bunch of studies on people getting older. And they found out, and that, just so you know, it's on, a lot of you don't have this, but it's on page 26. They really spell it out. They found out that when it comes to the emotion of anger, this is out of a big study of 300,000 people in the United States in 2010. 18-year-olds, and so the teenagers, they're the angriest. And then slowly but surely, as you get older, you get less and less and less angry. Thank goodness. Now, of course, there's bumps in the road, but the bottom line is you learn how to control all that adrenaline and testosterone and all those frustrations of teen years, and you're able to handle it. They also found that to be true with stress. 22, I thought it was so interesting, they said was the most, right around that, the late teens, early 20s was the most stressful time. And there's this one coming, it's a little above the anger, and it also goes down. So we learn how to handle it. Now, worry is pretty high, and people stayed pretty worried until they were 50. Isn't this interesting? But from 50 to 70, we start learning how to handle our worry, and we drop all the way down into our about 80, and then we bump up a little bit in worry. So I know you might not believe this, but this is what the statistics showed. It's very interesting. Now, sadness was low when they were 18, and it kind of went up until they were 50, and you peaked in your saddest in your 50s. And then after that, once to 10, you go on down low. And that's even a little surprising, because you know that when you're in your older, sad things happen. Your friends die, your parents die, your spouses sometimes die, but still they showed that sadness, we learned how to process it. Now, for joy and happiness, which is, they saw the smile curve, that there was a lot of joy and happiness in the youth. And it kind of, if you walk around in a park, you can see them, they're running around, they're laughing. It's just incredible. And then the kind of joy and happiness starts going down. I think what happens is you get married and you have kids and you get shocked. You're like, this is hard. I thought this was meant to bring me joy and happiness, and it brought me debt and diapers. Anyway, so you get down to 50, and by 50, they're almost adults then, if you think about your kids. And you kind of, it's your lowest point, and you get them out of the house. You think, oh no, what's going to happen? They're going to leave. They leave, and you start claiming your life back, right? And you start going up again. So actually, they found in the late 70s, 75, people are pretty joyful and happy. Now, yes, they had stress and they had other things going on in their life, but overall, they were pretty happy. They went and they asked people that were 30 years old and 70-year-old, and they said to them, who's happier, a 30-year-old or a 70-year-old? Both groups said the 30-year-old. They did. They both said 30-year-old. Then they said they made them take a test to see actually how they felt in the moment. And you know what? The 70-year-olds were happier than the 30-year-olds. So their perception was that to be 30, you would be happier. But the ones that were 70 were actually scoring higher on the happiness test. So once again, we actually have a lot of happiness older in our age, and we don't think we do. Isn't that weird? But when you actually sit there and score yourself on what's going on, you do. So I want you guys to think about what are 3 tools that you might be using right now. This is my fancy toolbox in here. What are 3 tools that you use that actually make you happy? Because I want you to know you're doing something. Something later in life actually brings you more joy and less stress. And I can tell you right now what one of them is. One of them is you're taking this class, or in other words, you're learning and growing. This class, another class, whatever it is, but they're positive stuff that you're putting into your mind. And when you put positive stuff in your mind, remember, you're wiring it. So you're wiring happiness. So think about what 3 tools you have. They did another study, and what they did is they had older people and younger people, and older, I'm meaning over 65, to look at people who were smiling, not smiling in a group and so forth. And they found out that when you get older, get this, you focus on people that are smiling in the group. Look, everyone, I'm smiling. You focus on the people who are smiling, and you're distracted. You don't, I mean, not distracted, is not the word. You don't take in the grumpy people. You turn away. And younger people, what they do is they focus in on the unhappy people. So they were trying to think, why would this be true? And they really thought that a big part of it is that older people realize that they don't have to be on guard all the time. You know, everyone is not a threat. So if I was walking, it's interesting, when I walk with my kids who are in their 20s now, and they're guys, they're big guys with muscles, and we're walking in a crowd, I notice other guys checking out my sons, and my sons kind of checking out other guys. And they're not checking them out because they think each other are handsome. They're checking them out for threats. Like, is this guy tougher than me? Is this guy, it's kind of like the rooster, you know, the big rooster, you know, is my feathers as big as his feathers? Could I take, and that's the kind of thing they're thinking all the time. When I walk through the mall, I'm not thinking that at all. I'm not looking at guys, and I'm not looking at girls, lining them up and comparing them with me as if there's some kind of threat, you know, going on. I'm just going through the mall, usually looking at people who are smiling and little kids that are playing with their moms and stuff like that, and thinking, how cute is that? So they're finding that what happens is that older people have learned that they don't have to look at everything ugly or threatening, that they'll look at the happy. And that's one reason why people are happier in older age, is because they don't get trapped in looking at the negative. They can turn away and look at the positive. However, they found in the study, when you had people who were older people who were distracted, so you got them to like do math tests or distracted in some way, so they weren't using, the reason why I have my brain here, they're not using their whole brain to make a choice, then they would too also look at the negative people and the frowning people and the people that looked angry. Now let's think about that. So in other words, older people were able to look at the positive when they were able to make the choice to look at a positive. It was a choice. But when they were distracted and they didn't have the capability, in other words, they were multitasking, then they too would look at the threat. Isn't that incredible? It's incredible. And so it goes into really supporting older people like to look at people who are smiling. And when you are smiling, you release dopamine, endorphins, and serotonin into your mind, right? And when you do that, it feels good. So if older people are looking at people who are smiling, then they're releasing these chemicals that make them feel better, right? And they're not looking at a threat or someone who's grumpy or upset. They don't have time for that. Let that go, because that releases that amygdala or Amy gets activated, and then you have cortisol coming through your body and adrenaline, and that pulls you down. So what's so beautiful is that when you smile, you're creating a symbiotic relationship that allows both of you to release good chemicals in your brain, activate with the reward center, make you both more attractive, and increase the chances of both of you living longer. Better with age, right? The smiling mind is better with age. So what are we doing? We're smiling. And you don't have to smile. I put this little doggy up there because you do not have to smile at another person. The same thing happens if you smile with your pet. Yes, your pet, or a tree, or a bird. Put the smiling mind on and you will feel better. They did another study. It's very interesting. They took these baseball cards from back before 1950, and they marked down, and they had a group that had big smiles, like Harry. He has a big smile. Partial smiles. Let me see. Happy Rabbit, but he has a partial. He doesn't look as happy as Harry. I think Gunboat is much happier. Right? You see Gunboat? He has a good smile. Pinky May has a good smile. Soupy, not so good. Not so good. So they found these baseball cards. They put them in the 3 categories, and then they found out how long did they live. And the average age for people in their baseball cards lived to 80. The average age for those who chose partial smiles lived to 75. The average age for people who chose no smile, and I think that's probably Soupy, the average age was 72. So you think, well, what is that? What is that about? But think about that. These people, these baseball, got to pick their picture and how they wanted to present to the world. And they felt that they wanted to present a happy person, where someone like Soupy, not a good. Campbell. Okay, well, his last name's Campbell. I was like, Soupy. Now I read his last name. That makes more sense. But he didn't want the world. They wanted to be a tough guy. When you live a tough guy, you come across a tough guy, you then have other people who react to you as a tough guy, and then you have that interaction. You're going to live 8 years less. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. I want to get over here, and I'm going to put us all on here. I'd like to see a smile. Where's that smile? I see Lisa smile. I see Namir. I see Karen and Barbara and Lori and Grandpa. Oh, my mom smile. Jackie and Dennis. Who do I sound like? What is that lady's name? Oh, when I was a little girl, it was a TV show. You guys remember what it was called?
Miss Nancy.
After Romper Room. Oh, but I think Miss Nancy too. You know what? If we all act like Romper Room or Miss Nancy, we'll start our day better. You've got to love that. You've got to love that. Better with age, I see Cheryl smile. Put on a smile. Let's do it. Okay, so let's go back. Good seeing all those smiles. We're not going to be like Soupy. All right, let's see. So it goes on, and they realized that the smiles is also part of a laughter. And I want to say that they find that babies laugh about 300 times a day on average, and adults 20. But as we get older, when we're with people, I think it's important. You will laugh out loud when you're with somebody else more than when you're alone. You might get a little chuckle, but when you're sharing a laughter, it puts all that smiling, all those chemicals in us. So it is important that we laugh more. It makes us more attractive and improve our relationship. It boosts our memory so we can move back, because what it does is it takes that Amy and gets Amy to relax, okay? So, and it lowers our stress and makes us more resilient. So better with age. You will find that people that live longer are happier, are smiling, and are laughing. So bring it on. All right, but now let's talk about, we've talked about all that good stuff. Let's just talk about a little bit with aging, what happens with some of the other emotions, because we all have them. So sadness. Okay, of course, older people and younger people all have sadness. And I want to say that older people lose their spouses, quite often friends. You'll lose your parents at some point, and that is sad. But they found people think that older people are sadder than younger people, and they're finding that's not necessarily true. What they're finding is younger people are equally as sad. They're sad about breakups and divorces and friends and things. It's just different. And older people can put their finger on why they're sad, especially when it's because someone passed away, has transitioned. But older people know how to deal with it. And they also have more empathy and compassion, which comes from the prefrontal cortex. So they've experienced sadness before, and they've gotten through it, where someone who is younger has sadness and they haven't gotten through it, so they can't have empathy and compassion for other people's. It's all so new to them and so raw. So becoming older and experiencing sadness is true, but it doesn't mean that older people are more depressed. They just have emotions of sadness like everybody else. Regret. I thought that this one was really interesting. He talked about regret. When looking back on my life, I regret. Now, they asked people between 19 and 89, and they thought, wow, well, you know what? Probably people who are older who had made a lot of mistakes and, lots of reasons to regret and so forth. Not true. Study found that acceptance of what can't be changed is a significant predictor of satisfaction later in life. They found that people that are older, they kind of learned how to let it go. They realized regretting something didn't work. So they might have 89 years of regret, but they've learned regretting it isn't going to change it. They come to a level of acceptance where younger people haven't had that, and they tend to live with the emotion of regret more. Older people And I like this. This is from the second agreement from the four agreements. Wonderful book. It says they learn to not take things so personally. So you could regret something happened, but you say, I just can't take this personally anymore. I got to let this go and move on. Whatever happens around you, don't take it personally. Nothing that other people do is because of you. It's because of themselves. So older people learn that. And so it's so important for you to realize that, maybe my kids are mad at me, but once I'm older, I realize that says much more about them and where they're at than it has to do with what I'm doing right now. I cannot carry the weight and worry and problems of the world. And if you do, I will tell you, you're not an older person, because that stress, you'll end up dying earlier. And we're going to better with age. Well, when you get older and older and older, the people who are upset and carried all that and have all that regret, they pass on. The stress just wears out their body. Inflammation. We were talking about, remember those nuns that we're talking about had all the plaque, right? They had all the plaque, but they didn't have the Alzheimer's, right? It's because they're not living in regret and worry and pain. So even if they genetically, this goes back to what I was saying in the very first slide, even in genetically, if they had it, they were putting oil in their car and it wasn't manifesting. So cool. So cool. I get so excited about that. So anger is also another one that we all feel. Now you remember back in the slide I showed you where anger is the highest at 18. It does show you that why it's so difficult to be around with teenagers, right? Because they don't know how to control their anger. So I'm going to just put this, I'm going to share it right here. So they don't know how to control their anger. And once they don't know how to control their anger, their Amy gets excited and then they have this quick reaction. They don't have any of the tools. Remember, I asked you, what are 3 tools that you use that are part of your art of happiness? You want to think about that. I bet those 3 tools are tools you use so you don't become angry all the time. And so when you get older, you learn how to not live in that Amy. And how do you have to do that? You have to learn it. And you have to develop your prefrontal cortex. So the prefrontal cortex keeps growing your whole life if you work it, but it grows really fast until 28. Remember, anger is high at 18. And then as you start developing, it starts going down. The more angry you are, for people who are angry, the more likelihood you're going to have a heart attack. Now that makes a lot of sense, but there's just scientific study after scientific study. If you cannot let go of your anger, you're going to wear and tear your heart because of the blood pressure, all the cortisol and all the adrenaline running through your body, and it wears and tears your system out. So we got to make sure that if we are and have anger, if we want to live longer, then we got to tame it. Tame Amy. I got a thumbs up. I got Robbie right there. I see you're big on it. There she is with a smile. I like it. I got it. That's awesome. Okay. So one way I teach this in my class, it's to tame Amy is sometimes laughter. You guys know that. Have you ever seen someone who is angry and then you crack them up with a joke? They're like, ah, and they're so mad that they're laughing, and then the whole Amy just shuts down and it releases this like a big balloon. It goes out. Laughter is such a good way. So I always say, when you want to drop the F word or the S word or the shucks word or whatever word you want to drop, instead of dropping that, drop the word bubble or some other funny, porcupine. Scream porcupine, porcupine. And when you hear yourself, you're going to start to laugh. Or if you're running through the house screaming porcupine, I can just see Jackie running through the house screaming porcupine, and Dennis going, "What's wrong with you?" cracking up. And then she'll start to crack up, brings you back to a baseline. Remember, we want to get back to our baseline so we can activate our prefrontal cortex and help us have solutions, right, on what's making us angry. You've been triggered. You're allowed to be angry. There is nothing wrong with that. But running around like a crazy person and spewing the poison out to other situations doesn't serve you. It just makes it worse. So in the class that we're doing right now, in the chapter we've talked about, you guys hopefully will identify 3 things that are tools you already use, because you're better with age, okay? But we've also talked about how to better with age, smiling, right? And that you have the tools, the average adult, older person has the tools to shift from looking at something negative to looking to something positive. The smiling mind, you have that capability. Laughing, then empathy. Remember, empathy is part of the art of happiness. It's okay that you feel sad. It's okay to witness someone else have sad, but you have a prefrontal cortex and you know that how they're feeling, and you can bond together with empathy and compassion, even in a difficult, sad situation. That is the art of someone who is older. Right? Someone is older. Acceptance. That's another thing we talked about today. We can accept, say, well, you know, bad things happen, but I can accept it. Now, I wanted to share with you guys, I'm going to go, just don't take anything personally. And they found out that older people, they mellow with age because they don't freak out. So I actually am going to share something. I hope my dad doesn't mind, but I sent him today which one did I send it on? I sent him an article about Florida and how they fired this person who was telling the truth in government. And then my dad, here it is. My dad wrote back to me this morning. I just thought this was such a good example, Dad. I'm putting it out to the world. Sorry. Yup. It's all over our local news. Investigations to file. I'll keep you posted. Surprising bad news isn't unique to any form of government. Dictators do it, kings do it, presidents do it, CEOs of corporations and nonprofits do it, even popes do it. It's all about power and control. It seems to be part of the being human. Too bad. Well, try to be better than that. Love, Dad. And the reason why I want to say that is because here I told him, this guy is bad, and and my dad's like, not acting all surprised. That's the art of happiness. That's the art of happiness in older age. He's like, Lindsay, in a very sweet way, people want control. They've done it forever in time. And okay, let's hope people can do it better. He didn't join the bandwagon and get all mad and, kind of thing. He just said, so let's see if we can do it better. That is the art of aging well. That is really successful psychology. It's like he witnessed what I said, he validated what I said, but he didn't add to Amy. He just said, Lindsay, let's move it along. It is what it is. Let's hope we can do better. That's something you all should realize and be so proud of. Getting better with age, you just don't flip out so much because you already have tools, techniques that you've already learned on how to shift yourself. This is what they're finding. You don't focus on all the negative. Things can be tough, like our health, right? And we get closer to death as we get older. There are things that happen. Other people die. But what they found out, and there's all these studies in the book, what they found out is that older people appreciate the moment more. They appreciate the little thing more. They're not chasing what the goals of the future. They're living in the present moment. And because they're living in the present moment, they have a sense of profound happiness that's much greater than people of younger years. And sometimes, because of our culture, we believe that's not true. Yeah, we think people are like Archie Bunker, mad at the whole world because it's funny. It's funny. That's funny. But the thing is, that's not the truth. When I hang out with all of you and so many of my other friends, it's just tremendous joy. It's not drama. It's just wonderful joy and pleasure moments. And we talk about, we can drink a cup of tea together and say, wow, this tea is great. We're not out trying to oppress each other. We're not sizing each other up. We're smiling at each other. We're happy for the little things. You are happier as you age because you know what you have right now is what you have to celebrate. And you're not chasing and wishing that you had the bigger house or the better car and getting lost in that, or you're not regretting what happened yesterday. You're like, so it happened yesterday. I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm moving on. And there is a great amount of humor that takes place. Instead of crying and being mad, we kind of chuckle and we laugh and we smile. So the art of happiness is part of getting better with age. All right, I'm going to end today by saying to you all that next week, I got us on here. Next class, getting better with age. We're touching the word that might trigger everyone. Okay, take a breath, get ready. I still want to have a smiling mind, even though I'm about to say the word. Memory. Yep. I'm getting older, and what's going on with my memory? You're telling me I'm getting better? I'm telling you, you're getting better. But let's talk about that big M word, memory. They actually, in some, they said the memory starts changing, and I'm not saying it gets worse or anything, but it starts changing at the age of 22. So I don't care who you are on this. We all can touch the M word, the memory word. We're going to go into it. We're going to do a deeper dive next Wednesday because we're better with aging. We're going to program our mind to make sure that we're looking at what we want. We're all going to be smiling and laughing and letting go of what doesn't serve us and not taking things personally and going, the 30-year-olds think they're happier than me, but they're not, right? All right, I'm going to just open this up. If anyone wants to have a comment, that would be great. Or if they something I said that was works well, you can unmute yourself. I think that'll be good. And let's see, I see my dad, he's about to unmute. Are you unmuting? Wendell.
I'm muted. I'm alive.
What did you want to say, Dad?
Oh, I didn't think you would quote me.
But you're smiling.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's crazy that, they fired this poor young lady because she gave out bad news. Oh, well.
Well, the good news is that we know that they did that. And in the old days, they would fire or kill the messenger and no one would know. Yeah. But you can't bury the truth anymore. And that's
one thing with age is you learn that what goes around comes around. So
karma.
That's right. If you try to suppress bad news, it'll eventually come out and you'll pay for it twice.
Gonna bite you in the end.
For having lied and then the bad news. So
yeah. That is really, and that's part of why I think people are happier when they're older, is they have perspective. we have wisdom, right? It's not that we don't have bad news that comes, but we've lived through them in the past and lived through them again. There was a really good study I want to tell you real quick before we end. They found out that people have 3 circles of friends. You have a very, very tight, close circle, then you have a medium circle of friends, and then you have acquaintances. And when you're young, that is always growing, and you're seeking out to have more acquaintances. When you're in business, it's, when you're in your work career, that 3rd level is really big, and it's important, and it takes a lot of energy. But around 50 years old, they said that all of a sudden people start realizing that takes way too much energy, right? And I got a lot of hanger-oners that are really grumpy people in these circles. And they find that when you get older, what people do is they start consciously pruning their circles and making them tighter. And older, wise people let go people that are poisonous. Where younger people will keep them on because they feel like they need them, you see? But older people are like, I am not hanging out with Bob anymore. He's just pulling me down. But a young person's like, I got to be with Bob. Bob has the Mercedes. I got to be with Bob, even though he's pulling them down. So they find older people have less people in their circles, but are much more pleased and much more happy with the people they have in their circles. And that's another reason why they feel more supported.
I was thinking earlier on when you were saying, and you've said it before, and I totally agree with it, what you think about, you bring about. When I was little, like grade school, junior high, I would go back east to visit my relatives, and I loved listening to like my grandparents talk. We'd like all gather at the table and their neighbors would come over. So I was like, always loved sitting with the older people and listening to their stories and stuff. But whenever I was sitting there, like especially with my aunt and uncle, I guess, like they had a lot of health problems, and when I was little, the health wasn't so bad, but then like maybe high school age, like as soon as, when people started aging, it was like, oh, my gout and my this and my that. And then like all the conversations turned to medical problems. But when I was with them and like, I'd be back in New York visiting, we're sitting at a table and they're like, doctor this, doctor that, ouch, ouch, ouch. And I swear I would like stand up and I'd be like, oh, and I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, it happened every single time. And I would always, before I like started taking mindfulness classes and learning about all this, I was like, this was back in the 80s, early 90s. And I'm like, God, I would get up and be like, oh, I can't move. And I'm like, I can move. Like what? I was internalizing their aches and pains.
Yeah,
I didn't have it. So it's just that it's a really good reminder to like, and that was an instantaneous, like, I'm like, okay, I came to the table, I could totally move. I got up after listening to this for however long, and now I'm like hobbling around. So it really, I have to remember that and then like program in my brain. Like yesterday I was weeding on a hill like this steep, and I was like, oh, I'm going to be sore tomorrow, but I have to like,
yeah.
I kind of am, but I got to talk myself out of it, because as easy as it is to get into the negative, it's like pretty easy to get yourself right back out of it too. You can.
Thank you, Lisa, for saying that, because I think that's very important with the coronavirus and the pandemic, anything that's going on. But the bottom line is, if you start reading about all the symptoms, you're going to start feeling all the symptoms.
Totally.
And so make sure you can certainly have knowledge. There's nothing wrong with knowledge, but make sure that you're getting the information and it's not being delivered emotionally to you. So another one's someone who is very excited. Our TV, the BBC is a wonderful news, and one reason why is they don't deliver the news as if everything is urgent and you're about to die. But if you go to our United States news, breaking story, and they're like, and they try to activate your emotion, and your emotion, when you activate your emotion and a feeling and knowledge, you're going to imprint it much more than if it was you read it, right? You read it because it doesn't have the emotion in it, or it's like BBC. They're like, say it like. So have information, but just make sure that you're getting accurate information and you're not putting someone else's emotion onto it, because then you'll imprint it as yours.
Yeah, I was just listening to a podcast this morning, and they were talking about some other things, but it came around to like, don't even give the virus power. Don't call it. Don't have that. Don't obsess over it, because you're inviting it into your body. And
you're
the lady,
stressing yourself out. You're activating Amy. You're putting adrenaline. You're putting cortisol through your body. You're causing inflammations. You're causing your heart to go up. So just don't. And we have that choice. Well, you guys, it's our time. It's now, I get confused. It's 12 o'clock. It's my mom, this computer says 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock at my parents' house. I want to thank you so much. So we're going to tackle the M word next Wednesday, and I will put this up on Lindsay Leinbach YouTube channel if anyone wants to share it and tell people to see it again. Thank you, everybody.
hopefully
Thanks,
we
Lindsay.
remember to come see you next week.
Thanks, Lindsay. Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Stay
guys.
safe. Stay at home. Laugh a lot, say bubbles.
Bubbles, 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 bubbles.
Or porcupine.
Porcupine. Tomato sauce.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Okay.